Hello, viewers of our Stop the Destruction of the World program. We are again with you to continue with our conscientization program about the psychosocial causes of the destruction of our planet and the humanity that lives on it. We are here to present the discoveries of the interdisciplinary science called analytical trilogy, or integral psychoanalysis, which unites all aspects of the human being. The human being is not only an integral being of body, soul, and spirit, all combined in one unit, but he is also totally integrated universally. That is, we are an energetic whole. We are in resonance with everything in the universe and in the cosmos. Everything that we think, feel, and do influences our fellow men, and vice versa. Therefore, we carry a huge responsibility to look after what goes on inside us, and which actually has a lot more influence than our external actions. Dr. Cappy?
Human beings in general think that they are harmed by what goes on the outside, that friends harm him, society, work jeopardizes him. In general, human beings think that the problems they suffer throughout their lives are all external problems. Even psychology generally has the idea that the human being is a victim. Jean-Jacques Rousseau said that the human being is born good, but that society perverts him and sets him back. Now, it helps to look at the discoveries of the ancient Greeks, because the society we live in is a Greco-Roman inheritance. Our civilization comes from Greece, which we call the cradle of civilization, and which later spread to Rome. The Romans took these Greek discoveries and spread them throughout Europe. And it's these discoveries that made civilization, and that exist until today. If there is a deviation from the most important parts of this civilization, then we suffer problems. And also society becomes perverted and erroneous. What I want to say is that the human being isn't born good, like Jean-Jacques Rousseau said. He is already born with what is called in the Jewish Christian philosophy the original sin. And what is this? The human being is born inverted, the opposite to what he should be. Human beings are no longer full of goodness, like they were in the beginning, entirely truthful and beautiful, because we rejected all this. This rejection caused the human being to think in an opposite way to how he should be thinking. You can try this. Everything that you think, find out what the opposite of that would be, think in that way, and then check out the results. Take a look at this sentence I have for you. The human being has everything within himself that he needs to be happy. What do I mean by this? The human being was created perfect, with all goodness and all truth and total beauty. Because you couldn't have something in creation coming from a being who is wonderfully perfect that wouldn't be wonderful and perfect. But due to this worthless envy, the human being rejected all of this. He rejects precisely what is fundamental. The French thinker Rochefoucauld once said that the most difficult thing to accept is the goodness of another person. The Chinese have a saying in relation to when one person attacks another. What goodness did I do for my neighbor that caused him to attack me this way? Do you see? Humanity always throws stones at those who produce good fruit, at those who do good for their fellow man. Now, this is a general thing, and principally with those who are in power. This is why we produce these programs, to try to reach those in power who make the laws, the lawyers, judges, to see if they can make laws that are more in accordance with these three fundamental elements, with truth, according to goodness, and with beauty in mind. These are fundamental for the continuance of civilization. Now, let's take a look at this diagram of how society currently lives. Let's see. Here I put at the top an inverted society, due to the traits of envy. So who are the people serving? Those in governments, look, the banks, economic power. Those with money getting richer and richer, while the people in general living in misery. When wealth is so exaggerated on one side, there can only be misery on the other. Looking again at the chart, we have the people serving the powerful, serving various types of institutions, serving politicians, commerce, even the church. And looking at the bottom, the people enslaved by the powerful. This issue of envy is fundamental. Even Freud, and later Melanie Klein, noticed that envy was at the base of all illness. And so here we can get into the genetic factors. The human being is already born with this desire to destroy what is good. That's why when a child is born, he cries. He doesn't want to be born. He doesn't want life. Many people even become suicidal. Many reject their family, the good things that family has for them, reject their professions, their own capacities, reject their intelligence, and even affection in their lives. And this is why we are making this program. Take a look at a sentence that I've selected for you. A good word is worth gold, but only the example convinces. What do I mean by this? For example, the Anglo-Saxon civilization, nowadays American, provides us with many examples of neurosis. People only seeking money, living for pleasures, and overeating in an entirely inadequate manner. I wrote something here about capital that was created by Adam Smith. Take a look here. His idea was that capitalist production should accumulate market activity and merchandise that generates money. But what happens is that individuals become interested just in the money. When they look for work, they want to know in first place how much they will make. When they set up a business, they want to know what their profit will be. If this person goes to the theater, for example, he will want to know what good, what benefits he will get from it. Do you see? People don't choose anymore a profession according to the cultural aspects, or what well-being or equilibrium will come from it. He wants to know how much he is going to earn, what monetary wealth he can get from it. So most of humanity nowadays lives off of gambling on the stock market, money speculation, or seeking to live in accordance with what money can provide them with, and live according to how much money they can get.
And in your book, Psychoanalysis of the Society, which is in its second edition, you mention this, and in Chapter 6 you talk about the anal society. You wrote that we are living, more than any other time in history, in an anal society, where people are linked to aggressiveness and money. Anal sadistic living. In this book, you conduct a psychoanalysis of society, and you analyze specifically the phases that have taken place in history. the oral phase, the genital phase, and now we are in the most difficult, the anal sadistic phase, the most aggressive, most materialistic, and the most sadistic of all time. Those of you who would like to understand more about this can find it in the book Psychoanalysis of Society.
What Claudia is mentioning here is that within these three phases that the human being passes through, the human being has currently regressed to the second phase. For example, you see in the days of the emperors, whether it be Louis XV or Louis XVI, during that time, we see the construction of great theaters, of monuments, of cities. That is, the nobles weren't particularly interested only in money. They were more into being highly narcissistic, showing themselves to be the wondrous benefactor of humanity, things like that. And after this era came the time of the bourgeoisie. With the French Revolution, they killed Louis XVI and his family, and the bourgeoisie were put into power. Nowadays, it's the capitalists who are dominating society, the money speculators. And why did this happen? This chart will help. Look. Because love, reason, and beauty, as we see here in the middle in the triangle, this forms the essence of the human being, which is surrounded by envy, by a mania of grandiosity, by arrogance, causing the human being to lose contact with himself. If the human being enters into contact with his inner psychological life, he will be good. That is, contact with his authentic original nature, his essence. He will be good, he will be aesthetical, and he will be truthful. But since the human being has lost contact with his essence, due to his arrogance and envy, looking here again, you will see he has created a mask, and this mask is precisely his illness. Take a look at the next part I wrote. The essence is sanity, which is surrounded by evil feelings and evil ideas. Now looking at the bottom part, the human being only wants to live within what doesn't exist in itself. That is, within arrogance, envy, these negative elements, which are the privation of goodness. Privation doesn't exist in and of itself. So human beings live a mask that doesn't exist in itself. It's something that sooner or later finishes up.
So we'll be back with you shortly.
The most original contemporaneous writer in the world today, says the National Scientific Research Center in France. A genuine contributor to the intellectual treasury of civilization, says former U.S. Ambassador Joseph Kogassian. For these times of uncertainty and conflict comes a work of extraordinary vision, hope, and moral clarity. Brazilian psychoanalyst and social scientist Norberto Keppe writes with wisdom and authority about the things that really matter. How to heal illness, how inverted science is leading the destruction of nature, and what to do about it. Finding spirituality within, structuring a truly just society. There are more than 3,000 books published worldwide every day. None are more important than these. The books of Norberto Keppe, Trilogical Science, leading us to a new world. Even if we don't have a lot of consciousness, we can perceive that life is divine. We live in transcendence, whether we accept it or not. We still live in an earthly paradise, except we don't accept it. In fact, we attack what is most beautiful, good, and real. Consciousness of our envy and inversion will make it possible for us to return to this paradise we've abandoned. We don't need to build it. We just need to accept it. The Stop the Destruction of the World Association was created to bring about exactly this consciousness. We are working to return the world to goodness. Join us.
This analysis that Dr. Kepi made of the society in this book, Liberation of the People, The Pathology of Power, includes a chapter here about the media and power, which shows that the media presently constitutes a barrier to consciousness. The media should be representing the consciousness of society and plays a very important role in conscientization. However, presently, the media is acting as a very strong barrier. This is the reason the media is becoming harmful to the people, to the nations, and to all of humanity. Kepi says here that it wasn't like this in the past, but now political power is dominating. Today, economics has taken over the media. And Kepi says here that the images in the media give one the impression that life is totally different from the real life, as if real life belonged to a separate world. All the things that make up our daily lives are no longer part of the media. The only exception is community TV and radio, educational channels, and small independent media, where we still see real life taking place. Our friend, Fernando Mauro, is president of the Brazilian Association of Community Channels. He has interviewed at the Stop the Destruction of the World Forum at the Grand Hotel Trilogia in Cambuquira, Minas Gerais, Brazil, last month about independent media. Let's see what he said.
Os estudos do Dr. Kepi mostram que a causa da destruição do mundo ela é interna, quer dizer, vem do homem, quer dizer, é a patologia, ou seja, a doença do homem que transpassa o homem e vai para a sociedade. E aí a responsabilidade das mídias ditas alternativas, que são canais comunitários, rádios comunitárias, sites de web, jornais de bairro, revistas locais, tem uma importância muito grande porque são as mídias conscientizadoras. São as mídias que falam, olha, isto, stop, para, isso é um problema, porque isso está destruindo o mundo. Você precisa repensar, você precisa rever o seu conceito. Então, é nesse sentido que a gente vê as palavras do professor Norberto Kepi como tendo eco junto à mídia comunitária, junto aos canais comunitários, motivo pelo qual boa parte dos canais comunitários de todo o Brasil veiculam já a programação do Homem Universal e também o programa Stop a Destruição do Mundo.
I would like to encourage our listeners and our viewers to see that if we endeavor with consistency to stop the destruction of the world, we can only better the quality of our lives. It's not only in Brazil that deserves something better because humanity doesn't deserve its current situation when you consider the origins of humanity. We have a divine origin, and we are living in an infernal life. We have the scientific understanding to see what's wrong and correct everything that is going wrong, but we have to be focused. You who are watching, like us here, are fundamental players, as Mauro suggested in his comments. You who have small groups or websites, you who speak to friends, can transmit this, and together we can start a great revolution of consciousness, which is the only effective one there is. Correct, Dr. Kepi?
So neurosis, and mainly psychosis, stems from the difficulty that the human being in general has in perceiving his own misery and his own bad intentions. And Freud, that great genius admired by all of humanity, he himself said that people become ill because of the bad intentions that they don't want to see in themselves. And so this brings up the issue of hypocrisy. People create beautiful masks and live artificial lives. Like the Jewish-German thinker Schopenhauer showed, that the world is pure representation, it's a mask. So we can say that everyone lives out their neuroses, their illness. Look at this sentence here. The greatest suffering is seeing one's own evil intentions. But then the greatest happiness comes afterwards from accepting consciousness of these evil intentions. Now let's see what Jean-Paul Sartre had to say. Look at the second one. He thought that it was the person himself who gives meaning to life. Look, in third place, that hell comes from the others. Can you see that his idea is inverted? This is why Jean-Paul Sartre was such a pessimist, why he had such a difficult life. He participated in many student protests in Paris, and he was more of a writer, not a thinker, who wasn't able to see what metaphysics shows, which together with physics is the queen of sciences. He couldn't see this basis that we have of goodness, of truth and beauty. Now, let's take a look at the diagram. The human being's essence is goodness, beauty, and what is real. But then later we denied this because of envy, and this has caused evil feelings and evil ideas, which we've covered by creating masks. So what do I mean by this? The fundamental elements that human beings have, apart from consciousness, are faith and love. Human beings have three fundamental elements: faith, consciousness, and love. Look at this sentence. These three are equals, as one cannot exist without the other. So just consider here, faith can't exist without consciousness and love. Consciousness can't exist without faith and love love can't exist without faith and consciousness. So notice how consciousness contains belief, contains faith. They are the same process, do you see? Consciousness is innate, and so are love and faith. Everyone has these three elements. Now, it's important to see existential analysis, that of Biswanger, Boss, Heidegger, and Viktor Frankl, with whom I worked in Vienna for quite some time. Take a look at the chart here. Here you can see Viktor Frankl. He's the one with his arm around my shoulder. Next to him is Professor Hans Hoff, the most considered neuropsychiatrist of Vienna. Behind him is Dr. Trudy, who was trained there in Vienna and knew everyone in the profession. And on the other side, they are all psychoanalysts. These are the people who comprise the basis of this profession in Vienna. So let's take a look at Viktor Frankl's ideas. Frankl was in a concentration camp for 4 years. He was able to stand 4 years of that. And he saved many lives there because he taught people the meaning of life that exists within each one. With him in the camp was a famous professor and friend of his who was writing an encyclopedia and who wanted to kill himself there, to commit suicide. Frankl showed his friend how important was the encyclopedia he was writing, and as a result, this man was able to stay alive until the end. So look at Frankl's ideas again. He thought that social life was very difficult, and that the human being has difficulty adapting to it. He wrote many books about this idea, particularly The Doctor and the Soul. In German, Auslich means medication. Seelsorge means cure for the soul. So this book generated lots of enthusiasm in Central Europe, in Austria and Germany, where they were very pessimistic and closed up at the end of the war.
So I would like to invite you to return next week at the same time on the Stop the Destruction of the World program. I would also like to thank Fernando Mauro for the support he is giving to us for our Stop programs.
E que mensagem você daria para o pessoal da Stop?
Continuem assim, é um prazer recebê-los nos canais comunitários, isso engrandece a programação dos canais comunitários no Brasil. Vocês têm uma programação internacional em mais de 20 países além do Brasil. E nós queremos aqui dizer que, no que diz respeito a canais comunitários, vocês são hors concours, participam do Brasil inteiro nos canais comunitários, nos moldes que grandes entidades nacionais como a AEPET, Associação de Engenheiros da Petrobras, também o fazem. Então coloca vocês na linha de frente no relacionamento com os canais comunitários. Em especial o canal comunitário da cidade de São Paulo. Eu queria apenas registrar que a CITA, Sociedade Internacional de Trilogia Analítica, é uma das entidades fundadoras do canal comunitário de São Paulo, está conosco na grade de programação há mais de 5 anos, e isso já é um patrimônio do canal comunitário de São Paulo.